I think we're ready to go. I'd like to welcome everybody. This is the 6th annual, I thought we were ready to go. Better? Yeah, okay, thanks, Steve. This is the 6th year we're doing this, and this year will bring our total of inductees to 35. So we're starting to find out a lot about the history of our community here, and we're still getting a little whistle. Okay, thank you. Thank you. If anybody, Diane asked me to remind, if anybody would like some water, we've got some water at the table just outside the door, and the restrooms are over on the left. Did my duty. I'm Dennis L'Italian, Vice President of the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center and Chair of the Hall of Fame Committee. And I want to thank everybody for being here, taking time out of your day to help recognize some really neat people in our city. I want to thank the Hall of Fame Committee for organizing the program today, and for our selection committee for all their work in getting the selection down to a number of people that we could put on our score sheet and try to delineate. There are so many good people to pick from in the community that it makes it's really difficult. I'd like to thank a couple of people before we start. One is Dennis L'Italian. He does a lot of stuff behind the scenes that nobody knows about, and one of the most important ones is arranging for the banners that you see behind me to get made. And after the ceremony, we're going to take and hang those down on the city square street lamp poles. So it makes for a pretty unique display. I'd also like to thank my wife, Debbie. I think she's still downstairs watching the door. But she gets a lot of stuff done with the research and putting the booklets together and the programs, and really is the brains of the operation. I'm just here to do the heavy lifting. Also like to thank Diane Sear. She's the president of the Cultural and Heritage Center. She keeps us on track as we're going through the whole process of doing this. And lastly, not lastly, but as importantly, is I'd like to thank the mayor of our city, Alan Casavant, for what he does to make this whole thing happen. He plays a lot of parts that make this thing all fit together, and he's also on the selection committee. So you'll see when he does the presentation, he lends some great insight into all of the presentations. I'd like to do a little housekeeping just for a second, explain how things are going to work today. The mayor will read a short biography of each recipient. When he's done, he'll present a certificate to the person accepting the award, who will then take it and walk back to what we call the Hall of Fame, the Wall of Fame. And we'll hang up the certificate on the wall, and then come back up to the podium and accept a plaque, an engraved plaque that he'll be able to take home with him. At any point during the process, preferably when people accept the plaque, if you want to say anything, if you want to share a little bit of insight with the crowd, you're certainly welcome to come up here. It's not mandatory, but it's definitely encouraged. With the plaque comes a little envelope, and it contains a gift card that we hope you'll use today to have lunch downtown. And while you're doing that, we're going to take the banners from here and hang them up around the light poles in City Square, so that after lunch you can come back and hopefully see your photo up on the banner in the City Square. And if you don't happen to see a picture on it, just look on the other side, because they're not the same picture on both sides. Anything else? Just so you know, we're being recorded. We're live on public access channel, and a recording is being made that will be available on our website. So eventually, I don't know how long it takes to get that whole process done, but we'll have it probably within the next week or two posted on the website, so anybody can see the ceremony. Also, you see everybody's gotten booklets, I hope. If you haven't got a booklet when you come in, please get one, because it's got the short version of the biographies in there. I guess that's it. So without further ado, I'd like to ask the mayor of the city of Biddeford, Alan Cassavant, to come up and start the presentations.
Thank you, everybody, and welcome for being here. I think it's really appropriate to have it in this room. I don't know how many of you know how historical, sometimes hysterical, this building can be. This chamber has been the seat of government since 1895 or 96. The original City Hall, which was on this site, actually burned in December, I think, of 1894. And they built on top of that. Renee O'Neill sitting there knows the whole history, but what's interesting to me is that as you see this building today, and I tell you about the fire, notice there's no fire suppression system in the building, which always made me wonder, like, why didn't they ever put that in? But that's a different story. At least, finally, what we're doing is we have chosen a contractor so that the dome and the windows and the fire suppression system will finally get up to speed. So that's really a giant step forward. And this is also just special in many ways as well, because I think it's the icing on the cake in many ways. Biddeford's been receiving so many accolades from national magazines, from neighbors, from people who visit for all the cool things that have been happening here. It's been a renaissance in many, many ways. And who would have thought like 10 or 15 years ago that what you see on Main Street would be the reality? But things have changed. We've had major investments in the downtown, significant investments, renewal of community pride, and all that praise from everywhere. I think those of us who've lived here all their lives recognize this place has always been special. And some people might say it's because of the geographical attributes, the ocean and the river, the parks, and what, but it's really the people. The people, for me, have always been special. And it really dawned on me when I became a teacher. I started teaching at Biddeford High School in 1976, and I remember thinking, I'm out of here in 5 years. The pay, I think I made like $8,000 a year or something like that, and it wasn't a lot of money. But a funny thing happened along the way is that I had some great kids, and the parents were great. And I learned to appreciate that the people here were always these hardworking, caring individuals. And so 5 years come and go, and I'm still there, and 10 years and 15 years, and obviously I didn't leave until I retired after 35 years. The people are the cornerstone of what Biddeford is, and the people who have been inducted and the people who are inducting today are the cream of the crop. They're the ones who have given of their lives in some form of fashion to make this a better place in which to live and to work and to play. You may not find all of them on like national magazines or newspapers and the headlines, but if you think about it, they truly represent and embody what a hero should be and what everybody should aspire to do in terms of giving of themselves, giving of their time, their expertise for the benefit of all. And so if you take away anything from this event today, I hope you recognize that everybody, everyone here, everybody in the community has opportunities to make their world, the world around them, a better place just by giving of themselves, even if that's just a smile every now and then, because even that enhances the lives of someone that's near you. So we'll start the process, and the first award is going to be given to Harold Alfond. Now, I grew up in Biddeford, and of course I remember St. Francis College because many of my friends, people I taught with, graduated from there. But as a kid I remember it because I used to sneak into the gym. Jim Beaudry turned a blind eye to those types of activities, but we'd go down there and play, on a regular basis. I think St. Francis College is foundationally part of this community and, of course, of UNE. But when Harold Alfond saw an opportunity to invest in that facility, in that entity, it changed everything. And I thought of that just last night, actually, when I was hungry, so I needed some food, and I was going downtown to grab some takeout, and I see all these kids from UNE in the downtown. That wouldn't have happened, 20 years ago. UNE is a vibrant part of Biddeford and Southern Maine and Maine because of the generous investment over time by the Harold Alfond Foundation. When I was teaching at Biddeford High, professors used to come into my classroom to speak about this, that, or whatever. Students volunteer with Heart of Biddeford on a regular basis. They're invested here, they help us, they give their expertise, and of course, in terms of being an institution, they're so well known. That's what generosity has given. It has enhanced the lives of thousands of students and of course the people of Biddeford as well. So let me read the biography. Harold Alfond, 1914 to 2007. Greg Powell, the chairman of the Harold Alfond Foundation Board of Trustees, once said, Harold Alfond understood the positive relationship between athletics and academics and was inspired by UNE's mission to educate Maine healthcare professionals. No truer statement has ever been uttered. Alfond was a successful businessman who saw the need for financial assistance at the University of New England, and because of that recognition, the Harold Alfond Foundation has supported UNE's growth and development as Maine's leading healthcare educator for over 25 years. Initially in 1995 with a grant to build the Harold Alfond Center for Health and Sciences, and in 2010 committing $10 million towards creating the state-of-the-art Harold Alfond Forum on the University of New England Biddeford campus, combined with an investment in interprofessional healthcare workforce education. His assistance enabled the Biddeford facility to expand UNE's healthcare science programs, faculty, and the number of students able to receive a quality education. While he was not born in Biddeford, his donations have impacted the city immeasurably. The opening of the Harold Alfond Forum became a destination for residents of Biddeford and beyond, with youth attending sporting events, sports camps, open skating, and other activities. Harold Alfond gave freely of his wealth, time, and talents. He believed, quote, whatever you can give, you've got to give. You've got to make your town better. You've got to make your state better. You've got to make everyone better because they can't get by on promises, end quote. He lived his life trying to make his world a better place. Alfond came of age during the lean years of the Great Depression. After graduating from high school, he followed his father into the shoe manufacturing business. In 1950, at the age of 36, he and his wife Bibby established the first private foundation in Maine, the Harold Alfond Foundation, beginning a family commitment to charitable giving that continues to this day. Upon selling the Dexter Shoe Company in 1993, Alfond and his wife accelerated their charitable giving. In his final act of generosity, upon his passing, he committed nearly all of his wealth to the Harold Alfond Foundation to support charitable causes in the state of Maine. In 2020, the foundation announced an additional $30 million investment in UNE, demonstrating a continuing, passionate commitment to the university and the people of Biddeford. And for that, we thank him. If I could present this to his daughter, Susan. Dennis will help you? Yes. Just follow Dennis.
There are two, one for the foundation and one for the family.
Mm-hmm. come right here. Let me read the plaque that is being given. Harold Alfond, 1914 to 2007, philanthropist, business entrepreneur. As founder of the Harold Alfond Foundation that has generously supported the University of New England, he has improved the lives of students and members of the Biddeford community through educational opportunities and modern facilities. Inducted September 23, 2023. This is for you. If you'd like to stay a few years, you certainly can. Okay. And on behalf of the foundation, this plaque, I'll give it to Alan. And so, if you'd like to say anything, Alan, you certainly may.
Certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the University of New England, we're honored to be associated with Harold Alfond and the Alfond Foundation in the work and the generosity that he's provided UNE and the state. He was a tremendous man, and he's done a lot for everybody in the state. Anybody that's gotten a scholarship for their newborns can appreciate that. Education was one of his passions, and we're very fortunate to be able to recognize Harold Alfond today with all of you in his support of all of us in the state of Maine. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will honor a good friend of mine, David Flood. David is always on a mission, always. But what a legacy he has left behind. If any of us could do half of what he has done over his lifetime, that would be a life well led. He's always been a cheerleader at Biddeford, always expressing optimism, always in the background, though. The limelight was never his gig. He always enjoyed just doing what had to be done, and sometimes it was a job that nobody else wanted to do, but he was there doing it. In fact, if you look at all the different festivals and major events in Biddeford over the last 20 or some odd years, if you look closely, David's there. You know, doing his thing, doing it to make people feel better. I had to chuckle because I was cleaning out my office a little bit before, because I'm finished being mayor after 12 years, and I stumbled upon the board member of Heart of Biddeford, the original board, and of course David was part of that. He became the first executive director. This goes 2004 and 2005. And that was a huge boost to the city in terms of generating optimism about the downtown. I also found a Courier newspaper from April 18th, 1991, and look how thick it was, you know? And this was in the early years. I mean, it got even bigger and better. The good old days. Let me read his biography. David Flood, since his arrival in Biddeford in 1989, David has been a force in improving the quality of life in the community. On July 13, 1989, the first issue of his Biddeford Saco OOB Courier was published, and his talents in the newspaper world were visible to all. The paper soon became the focal point for local news. Weekly editorials were widely anticipated, and the paper's investigative and thorough reporting became a cornerstone of political and economic discourse and debate. In many ways, his paper fueled the passions of Biddeford's political world. In 2004, David became the leader in the founding of the Heart of Biddeford, an organization that today plays an integral and dynamic role in the ongoing redevelopment and investment in the downtown. David worked diligently to raise the initial $40,000 needed to operate HOB. He served as the organization's president for the first 5 years, and from the onset, he passionately believed in the vision and possibilities of a vibrant downtown. While many scoffed at his idea of a rejuvenated Main Street, David persevered, and his vision paved the way for today's modern downtown Biddeford. He was a prophet who foretold the Renaissance that everybody today enjoys. He also served on the HOB Board of Directors from its inception until he moved to Delaware to be near his children and his grandchildren. David did not merely talk about the downtown. He actively invested in the downtown, buying and renovating the building that today houses Elements 265 Main Street. The beautiful and colorful mural that exists on the building wall was a byproduct of his willingness to work with the city's Public Art Commission and Engine. He also bought and renovated the old Union Hall of Pepperell Manufacturing on Main Street. While he invested because he saw economic promise, he also invested because he believed in doing what he told others to do. David was politically active, serving on the city council for multiple terms. Always a visionary, he urged in 2008 that the city ought to begin a recycling program, foreseeing that need before anybody else had. Eventually, he ran for mayor because no one else wanted to risk running against an incumbent. He did not win, but he was as gracious in defeat as he had been in accepting the challenge to run. He served on numerous commissions and committees, including the Strategic Planning Committee and the Zoning Board of Appeals. He even found time to serve as president of the Biddeford Chamber of Commerce in 1996, and during his tenure, membership doubled. No matter what the undertaking, David was always willing to help. Never liking the limelight, David's work was always in the background, but seemingly in every major event or festival in the city, David could be seen doing what had to be done or what no one else was willing to do. Because of his willingness to serve in the Biddeford community, in August 2022, the Biddeford City Council awarded him with the Spirit of America Volunteer of the Year Award. On his LinkedIn page, David says, "I enjoy making a difference." He certainly has. David, thank you for everything that you've done. Let me read the plaque. Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center, Hall of Fame Award, David Flood, journalist, volunteer, publisher. As a publisher and founder of the Biddeford Saco OB Courier and a visionary founder of Heart of Biddeford, he was an engaged force in improving the quality of the life in the community. He made a difference in the lives of many. Thank you.
I have some special people here. Alan said he, meaning I, bought a couple buildings. Carolyn, my wife, was always there, of course. And then my son Chris, my daughter-in-law Heather, and two really great kids, grandkids, Irving and Florence, yes, who are, yes. Irving's smiling because he beat me in chess twice this morning. I'm sorry that Bob Dodge isn't here. Bob Dodge, I mean, really, he helped with the starting the Heart of Biddeford, and I wish he was here. And Wallace Nutting. Bob actually helped more, for whatever. And actually, I did not grow up here, but my father did. My granddaughter is a Florence Flood. My grandmother was a Florence Flood. So, yes, I had a Florence Flood in my life for the first 33 years of my life. Then I didn't have a Florence Flood, and now maybe I'll have a Florence Flood for however long I live. Probably not another 33 years, anyway. But anyway. But my father grew up here. My father and Alan's father were in high school together. They both graduated Biddeford High School, 46. Anyway. Thanks. It really touches me.
Next is Paul Gagne. Kind of like Mr. Everything. soft-spoken, but as strong as they come. And in many ways, he's the backbone of many, many projects. I first met Paul when I was a city councilor back in the 70s, I guess, or early 80s. And he was working in the computer department of the City Hall. And even then I began to realize, of course you gotta remember, this was the beginning of computers when you had a room like this with all these big machines and data processing cards, and all of that is in a phone today. I mean, just entirely different world. But he was there because it was the beginning and trying to get the city all well and organized. And he did an exceptional job. He was also involved in the community. He played hockey at the ice arena in the Industrial League. I played against him. I still have the scars of his elbows, but that's a different story. Let me read the biography. Born in 1941, Paul Gagne, known as Norman in his youth, I did not know that at all, grew up in Biddeford and spent his entire life here. He graduated from St. Louis High School and served in the Air Force for 4 years, 1960 to 1964, spending 14 months on Guam. He married his high school sweetheart, Pat, and together they raised his 2 children in Biddeford. Paul worked at West Point Pepperell and served the city of Biddeford as a data processing manager for 30 years. Many challenges existed during those days of computerization with the big machines and the data processing cards, but Paul's role and leadership in the building of automated systems for the city of Biddeford were recognized and appreciated numerous times over the many years of his employment. Remarkably, all of this technological innovation occurred during his tenure under 10 different mayors. Man, anybody that could survive 10 mayors doing something right. Paul has demonstrated repeatedly his passion for bringing people together and supporting his community by devoting countless hours to community organization and events. He was recognized as the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center's 2021 Volunteer of the Year, and this year he was awarded the Spirit of America Volunteer of the Award by the city of Biddeford. He is still active in installing the annual Christmas decorations of the downtown light poles, and is best known for all the time he spends helping to organize the La Kermesse Festival. A jack of all trades, he gets done what needs to get done. He remains active in many civic organizations, currently serving as the treasurer of the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center. He has served the Good Shepherd Parish as a sacristan, a member of the parish council, and he was involved in the St. Joseph PTO. He is also on the board of directors of La Kermesse, serving as its treasurer. He is currently the chairman of the Good Shepherd Finance Committee and vice president of Saint-Jean-Baptiste de Bienfaisance. Family is important to Paul. He is kept busy with his children, coaching his son in Little League Baseball and Biddeford Youth Hockey, and he spent much time at the Biddeford Ice Arena, including as a player. He and his wife follow their daughter's activities, and they continue to be involved with their grandchildren. There are few people in the history of Biddeford who have spent as much time and energy working to make this a better place for the community. If you look closely, you will see Paul's fingerprints everywhere. Paul Gagne, thank you. Let me read the inscription on the plaque. Paul Gagne, tireless volunteer, community organizer with a lifelong passion for supporting the people of Biddeford by devoting thousands of hours to numerous civic organizations and nonprofits, as well as to La Kermesse. His fingerprints of care and love of community are everywhere in this city. Thank you. Want to say something?
Real quick. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Just a few little words. Let me start by saying that this is beyond my wildest dreams to be honored for something that I enjoy doing. I would like to thank Chairman Dennis Letelian and the Hall of Fame Committee. I'm sure that it was not an easy task to select individual for this honor. I would also like to congratulate my fellow honorees. Special thanks to you for my wife for her patience and understanding continuing, and my son, Timmy, and daughter, Tricia. I will say that according to my wife, we both serve on many committees at different organizations together. And as far as your scars, you just happened to be in my way when I was going up to the top. Again, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, the hissing, you will be pleased to know that the City Council a few weeks ago approved the purchasing of a new system because this is kind of a dinosaur which creates all types of problems. So today's is a typical example. So the next one we're going to do is Urbain Ledoux. When Michael Ginnard, who I've known for a number of years, first told me about him, I was stunned because I never heard of him. And yet his voice and his opinions resonate so much today. I say that because he was involved with the unemployed and the homeless and the poor back after World War I into the 20s and through the Great Depression. And of course, we all know that today many people are struggling with those same ills. You know, we see them on our streets, in the streets of the state of Maine. So it begs the question, if Urbain was alive today, what would he do? What would Mr. Zero do? Because that was his nickname, Mr. Zero. Let me read the biography. Urbain Ledoux, 1874-1941. That Ledoux was born in Canada and not the United States was an accident of birth. His parents had earlier migrated to the United States, but they returned to Canada when the mills closed due to the Panic of 1873. Ledoux was born soon after their return to Quebec. His parents returned to the United States a year later, before Ledoux's first birthday, and settled in Biddeford. As a young boy, Ledoux exhibited many of the characteristics ascribed to him throughout his life: his infectious smile, his energy, and his ability to persuade and lead. He graduated from the Collège Mariste in Van Buren and returned to his hometown after graduation at the age of 17. He studied law. By 1893, he was publishing a French weekly in Biddeford called L'Indépendance. At age 20, he ran for the Biddeford City Council as a Republican, and because of his efforts on behalf of the Republican Party in 1896, he was appointed to the U.S. Consular Service. His appointment was hailed by local York County newspapers, which praised Ledoux as, quote, a particularly bright and well-informed young man, end quote. He was assigned to Three Rivers, Quebec, and arrived in August 1897. He returned to Biddeford in November to marry Carmeline Péchaud, the daughter of Pierre Péchaud of Péchaud Band's fame, in a wedding that was described as one of the most brilliant ever seen at St. Joseph's Church. Ledoux left the government, began working to increase awareness of the unemployed, as well as to work with the peace movement. As a believer in the Baha'i faith, his life mirrored their principles of helping others. His intent was to, quote, awaken the slumbering conscience of the people, end quote, in their understanding of the poor, the homeless, and the unemployed. After World War I, he worked with veterans, helping them find jobs and housing. In 1921, he conceived the idea of a slave market on Boston Common to, quote, sell, end quote, the services of those he was helping. It is believed that up to 150 men found jobs through Ledoux's auction. Someone mentioned earlier today, can you imagine if he was alive with social media and everything else, what he would have been doing? All right, because this is way cutting edge back then. He then moved from Boston to New York to establish what he called the Tub, a soup kitchen, which he ran for more than a decade until the New Deal. During the Great Depression, Ledoux worked strenuously to ensure dignity for those who were poor or unemployed. He recognized how such men and women were ostracized and stigmatized, and he was determined to make people aware of their plight. In 1933, he even ran for mayor of New York, but many times his actions got him in trouble and sometimes in jail. His efforts were widely covered in the local and national press. Very few articles mention that Ledoux was from Biddeford, Maine. It was in this period that he acquired the nickname Mr. Zero. After he responded to an onlooker who asked, "Who are you?" Ledoux supposedly responded, "To you, I am nothing." He did not want attention given to himself, but wanted others to think about the plight of those less fortunate. On January 8, 2023, the prestigious La Presse of Montreal carried an article that called Ledoux an idealist, a pacifist, an entrepreneur, street hawker, militant, and diplomat. In 1931, in a passport application, he called himself a philanthropist. In 1938, he called himself a scenarist and a director because he was traveling to South America to make movies. He was indeed a Renaissance man. He died in 1941 and is buried in Biddeford, a city that he always considered home, as he often returned to visit his parents and in later years his sisters. The headstone in the family plot at St. Joseph's Cemetery is a simple one bearing the names of each member of the Ledoux nuclear family. His wife Carmeline is also interred in that plot. The inscription on the stone, Urbain Ledoux, 1874-1941, shows not even a hint that the Franco-American who is buried there had once received national attention and had met with President Harding to discuss world peace and the plight of the unemployed. Mr. Zero was so much more than he appeared to be. We could not find any relatives of Mr. Ledoux, so there's no one to actually accept his plaque, but we have one that will be placed on the back wall, and Dennis will take care of that. The last award goes to Dane Yorke. I remember when I was a kid going to St. Mary's Grammar School, first becoming aware of the books that Dane wrote, things about Biddeford. I actually remember him sitting in his office. There was this old man hunched over. This is vague memory. I remember a typewriter there, but anyway, he was in the side offices. He went into the children's section, but he was there. I guess it shows how old I am if I can remember him. But I remember him there. What he wrote about Biddeford was important because they were the books that people first went to get a greater appreciation and understanding of what this community was all about. So I read about the Haley House. I read about Squando and the curse of the Saco River, which the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center is going to be using as a basis for teaching about the conflict between the Native Americans that were here and the English colonists. I learned about the mills. I learned all that stuff, and I became infatuated with it. And my imagination ran wild. I remember playing games with my friends and neighbors about, whatever it happened to be in terms of some of the characters that I read about. So what he did is important because it helps us better understand our growth and the development, but also who we are as a people. Let me read the essay. Actually, Dane Yorke, 1887-1967. Dane Yorke was not raised in Biddeford, nor even Maine, but that isn't something you can tell from his body of work. Born in 1887 and raised in New Jersey, he described his early adulthood as having, quote, vegetated in a business office until the war, then entered the Army and served as an officer until the close. Came out of the service with a vast restlessness that only hard travel could cure, end quote. Yorke did eventually settle down, moving to Biddeford with his wife Esther Crowley Yorke in the early 1930s. He initially worked as a manager at a bookstore here, the Dearborn News Company, and published stories and essays for American Mercury magazine, working under H.L. Mencken. as well as authoring the novel as much as twice. Yorke also worked part-time at the library. When then city librarian Emma Hatch retired after 42 years, he became the city librarian at the library in 1937, but having a demanding job did not slow him down. He reported that he worked 48 hours a week on the 1950 census and still took on additional work for the statewide Library Association. In 1951, he was serving as the Director of Civilian Defense and Public Safety for Biddeford, an organization where he led more than 200 trainees for peacetime emergencies. At the library, Yorke bought books for the community, oversaw 2 major renovations, and ran programs for adults and children that often featured his own research and work on a local history, his most important legacy to Biddeford. Over his 30 years in leading MacArthur Library, Yorke amassed a historic collection that still benefits the Biddeford community and published a series of nonfiction books and essays about Biddeford's history. Through the 1940s, he published The Men and Times of Pepperell, an account of the first 100 years of the Pepperell manufacturing, as well as a history and stories of Biddeford. His legacy lives on as his work is still foundational to researchers looking into the history of Biddeford. MacArthur Library is fortunate in that it retains in its collection a wealth of knowledge from Yorke, along with all of his own handwritten notes. Accepting on behalf of Dane Yorke is Jeff Cabral from MacArthur Library. Let me just read the plaque that I'm presenting to Jeff. Dane Yorke, 1914-2007, librarian, author, historian. Through his collective local stories of legends, folklore, and events, his research of Biddeford history became the foundation for generations of those who have wanted to learn about the people who inhabited this land on the Saco River. Again, congratulations.
Good afternoon. So I've been the library director since 2011, and we hear Dane's name quite a lot, not only on the books, but just in terms of many of the generations still coming through remember Dane, and remember Dane working there. And the mayor's story about his office reminded me that probably about 4 or 5 years ago, 2 women stopped outside my office. It's the same office. I have his office. And he and they were standing there, and I could hear them talking and see them pointing, and it turned out that one of them was Dane's typist, and she said she used to sit right there, and he would hand the pages over the desk to her for his book, and she would type them up and then hand them back to him to proofread. And so they had some great stories about Dane. And one of the biggest challenges now of running the library is finding room on the walls for all the plaques we have of all the people that have contributed to MacArthur Library in its very long history. I don't know why I'm causing more feedback than anyone else. Must be time to go. I just wanted to share, I think much like every other inductee, Dane was very humble from what we know of him, and he could turn a phrase for sure, and we have some great correspondence between Maine State Library and Dane when they were writing to him and asking him for copies of his novel and copies of his books, because and this was back in 1935, so it actually might have even been a couple of years before he was the city librarian. And you could see that they had to write letters multiple times to ask him, because he was obviously not getting back to them fast enough for their liking. But this still stretched over months, whereas now we email someone, and if we haven't heard back by the next day, we're on the phone to them or texting them. But this series of letters went back and forth, and in one of them, they said, "Thank you for the biographical sketch. You've presented the salient facts in your life, but you've omitted any dates and mention of your birthplace. Was it in Maine, and might we have a date or two? just trying to get the facts. You would think that the city librarian or the person that was about to become the city librarian would be very factually oriented, but I think he wasn't when it came to himself. And he wrote back, scrawled on this letter back and mailed it back to them. Miss McLeod, this passion for dates is, I think, a sad affliction. However, I was not born in Maine. I have been told that I was born in William Penn's Hospital, Philadelphia, but I do not personally recall this event. So this is given as pure hearsay. And then he said the date for his birth year. And recently if you go to biddefordhistory.com, you'll be able to hear an audio recording in which Dane participated. I can't remember the year, but it was a conversation between several city staff. I think the mayor at the time was there, and I can't remember which mayor it was. And they had this radio transmission around World War II or just after World War II with someone in Biddeford, England, for which Biddeford, Maine is named. And Dane was there. I think the city treasurer was there. So it's this great audio recording that we just had repaired and digitized a few years ago. And it's very crackly, but you can hear it, and you can hear Dane's voice, and he was very soft-spoken. So thank you very much.
I'm going to turn this back over to Dennis in a sec, but I was just standing there and I was looking at these individuals. The diversity of talent is what strikes me. Each brought to the table their unique set of gifts, and all five used them to make Biddeford a better place. And again, as I said in my earlier remarks, that is an opportunity for all of us to reflect upon what we can do to give back to our community to make it better. So thank you for being here, and let me go back to Dennis.
Boy, what a history lesson. Just a couple of items before we wrap this up. Before you leave, we'd like to have everyone come up and get some pictures in front of the banners. I think we'd all enjoy having a little memento of today's presentations. And other than that, I'd just like to ask the president of the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center, Diane Sear, to come up and say a few words, and that will wrap us up.
I don't have a lot to say, but I do want to thank every single one of you for coming. I think this is really important, and it is the people that make the community. And I'm happy to see some of our former Hall of Fame members here also. And just thank you very much. And please, we would like to get some group pictures and all of that, if you can stay a little bit longer. But this concludes the ceremony. Thank you, and congratulations, everyone.